Wasabi guys, Void here coming back at y'all with yet another video. We are nearing the end of the year, almost 2018 before you know it. And not so long ago I made a video asking you guys, what were your favorite cards from this year for Commander. I believe it was actual Commander options and not just Commander cards. So what I want to do with this video is just give you guys my opinion, just my 10 most favorite cards for the Commander format that came out this year, 2017. Now obviously this is just my 10 favorite. If you don't see a card on this list, it's probably because it's just my own opinion. So anyway, let's start it off here. There's no honorable mentions because again, it's just my list. Number 10, we have Patron of the Vein. This guy is incredible. Enters the battlefield, destroys a creature your opponent controls, and whenever a creature your opponent controls would die, exile it, and you put a +1/+1 counter on each vampire you control, which is just insane. This is very similar to Kalitas from Battle for Zendikar, where you're able to mess up your opponent's graveyard strategies by exiling the creatures that die. Very powerful, not only for the fact that it's great at hating on your opponents for their graveyard strategies, but also getting +1/+1 counters on each one of your vampires. And for the Edgar Markov vampire deck, this card was just perfect. Never before seen. Brand new card for Commander 2017. Fantastic. One of my favorite vampires of all time now. Number 9, I have Hepatra, Vizier of Poisons. She is a fantastic Commander option. The only bad thing about her would be the fact that I just don't think she fits in well as one of the 99. She's really just meant to be a Commander option because of the fact that -1/-1 counters aren't really that big of a thing aside from Infect. We don't really have a ton of these synergies in the format yet. Hopefully we get some more support for Hepatra, but as of now, she's really not that bad. She's quite enjoyable. You can go with a token strategy, which obviously is the best way to go with her. You distribute -1/-1 counters on your opponent's creatures, get some snake tokens. Incredible. There's a ton of enchantments that synergize with it right now, but if we add some more, it would definitely make the deck a lot more enjoyable. Still pretty fun. Number 8, I have Sunbird's Invocation. This is very similar. It's sort of like a pseudo cascade effect for all of your spells though. On a 6-mana red enchantment that sits on the field, each spell you cast, you look at the top cards of your library equal to that spell's converted mana cost, and you can cast spells that have a CMC or less than that converted mana cost. So in a very similar way, it is pretty much cascade. It's limited to the fact that you can't just keep looking at the top of your library until you hit a card, but the fact that you just get more and more value off of the spells that you cast is insane. When it comes to just brewing for red decks, mono red decks, this is definitely an auto include, but even outside of mono red, again with cascade decks, you could definitely throw this into something like a Yidris and just take advantage of all these different cast triggers. Just a fantastic card. Number 7 is Neheb the Eternal. This dude is incredible for mono red. Just a very powerful, not necessarily a Voltron deck, but there are certain ways that you can make it Voltron. More or less, this is just a way to burn out your opponents, because the more damage that you deal to them, the more life they lose, the more mana you get your second main phase. So you want to use that mana to then burn them out again. It's just insane. There are so many different ways that you can kill your opponents. It's very aggressive, and that's what you want out of red. And we didn't really have a super aggressive red deck. We have Krenko decks, which are just tokens, but there really wasn't a super aggressive way to just kind of beat down your opponents unless that Krenko could survive. With Neheb, all you really need is play Neheb, play a big burn spell, main phase 2, use that mana to play another one, and just dump a ton of mana into your X costed spells, something like a Fireball, and now you're in business. I mean, a ton of damage, very aggressive, but then again, that's exactly what you want out of red. Fantastic, and the Afflict only makes him even tougher to block for some people. He's a fantastic Commander option, but he's also pretty decent as one of the 99. So that's really what makes him deserving of this list, at least. Number 6 is the Scarab God. Now, in particular for Commander, we want to focus on the first ability there, which is the trigger at the beginning of your upkeep. Each of your opponents is going to lose X life, and you scry X, where X is the number of zombies you control. That's the important part we want to focus on for Commander. The activated ability to exile a target creature from a graveyard, it's nice, and it's definitely what's going to keep it in a lot of different decks, but mainly when you talk about zombie tribal, that upkeep trigger is just fantastic, and it's going to keep the pressure on your opponents. But altogether, you're just talking about the perfect zombie tribal Commander option. Aside from the fact that he's not actually a zombie, he's just a god, there's really nothing else wrong with him. When he dies, he comes back to your hand. That's very zombie-like. Good recovery. You can manipulate what your opponents have in their graveyard. You exile their creatures so they can't get them back. that's fantastic. And there are definitely some ways you can abuse the activated ability, make it cost less with something like a Training Grounds. But aside from that, just a fantastic card. Not just limited to zombie tribal, but if you want to throw this into something like Marisol the Pretender, you can use it for its activated ability, and it's still very strong. Number 5, I have Baral, Chief of Compliance. All the way back from Aether Revolt, this guy is fantastic for Wizard Tribal, for Storm, for control. Whatever you need is going to put in that work for you. Makes your instants and sorceries cost 1 less, which is just fantastic for Storm. You want cost reduction, makes it easier. You don't use up as much mana. And whenever you counter a spell from an ability or an actual card, you get to draw a card and then discard a card, so it's basically a loot effect. As a commander, he's just super powerful. See some play 1v1, but definitely capable in multiplayer games as well. Just good card draw, good cost reduction. Those are usually going to see a lot of play in the format, and he's a definite part of the 99 in so many different decks now. And I personally just love him because he fits in perfectly with Wizard Tribal. You know, he's super cheap, he's only 2 mana, but yet he just puts in so much work into whatever deck you seem to throw him into. Just a fantastic creature. Number 4 is Edgar Markov, and oh my gosh, are vampires a thing in Commander? More so now than they've ever been because of this guy. And it's not even just including white, it's the fact that the decks are now more aggressive. The problem with vampires in the past was that there just really wasn't this consistency. You had certain effects that could put +1/+1 counters on your vampires, but nothing really fast enough. Well, Edgar Markov is 6 mana, but he also has haste and first strike, which means you're more likely to swing in with your creatures, get +1/+1 counters, knowing that you have a huge army of vampires with +1/+1 counters, and you have Edgar Markov leading the charge. That's likely going to be the 5/5 with first strike the first time you swing with him. Very difficult to block, and could get out of control, especially when you consider the fact that the Eminence abilities are sort of a nod to Commander 2013 with Aloro and Derevi, where you had these synergies from the command zone, and it's just super busted. You get these tokens off of him, you just get a huge army. They're only going to get more +1/+1 counters on these tokens, and it's very difficult to kind of outrace the vampire army now. It's very oppressive. Just a fantastic option. I love the flavor. I love the fact that he's Soren Markov's grandfather. I just love everything about this guy. He's just fantastic. Number 3 is Paradox Engine. Now, I'm sure you guys are sick of seeing this card if you play against people who combo off with it, but in all honesty, if you've ever played with it, it is just fantastic. It is so much fun. Even if you're unable to officially combo off and win, just the fact that you're tapping and untapping so many different permanents just by casting spells, I mean, it can really be involving and fun just to see where your deck can go with it. Now, I'm sure a lot of decks that are building around Paradox Engine are built to win with that card, and all you really need is a good card draw engine and a couple mana rocks, and you've pretty much won the game. Because all you really need to throw this into something like a Storm deck, because Storm decks are all about cast triggers. Just a fantastic card. It is annoying, yes, if you don't like these super easy win cons. I mean, you have to appreciate the fact that this isn't just a 1-card win. Your deck does have to be kind of a well-oiled machine in order for this card to really work well. But still, I mean, artifact decks, wizard tribal decks, when you want to tap down, draw more cards, it works perfectly there. Storm decks, anywhere you put this card, it seems to be an MVP. Just a fantastic card. And then number 2, we have Inala Archmage Ritualist. Honestly, my favorite commander option of this entire year, and for a good reason. She brings quite a challenge when it comes to deck building. I don't think I've had this challenge with a lot of my commander options. Usually they're pretty straightforward, you know how to play them, but there are multiple different directions you can go with her Eminence ability. Yes, you just pay the 1 mana, you get a copy of whatever wizard enters the battlefield, but that's very ambiguous. You don't necessarily know, how am I going to combo with this? Because usually when we think of wizards and commander, we think of Azami, Lady of Scrolls, epic combos, and we do have the Champion of Merfolk guy, where you can just keep dealing damage, get more turns. It could definitely be a combo there, but aside from that, there's really not much else you can do aside from go back to Azami, try to make that deck work. But the thing I like about Inala is the fact that she's not very straightforward. I think at first glance you don't really know exactly what you want to do. You do know that you want to use some wizards with good ETBs to take advantage of the token you get off of her Eminence. But aside from that, it's sort of, well, how do I win? With Azami, you draw cards, get to Laboratory Maniac, so I'll probably have to do a deck tech of her again. I did one right around when Commander 2017 first came out, and I didn't really know exactly what I was doing, but now I have a better idea of how to play her, and it's pretty much try to put in some elements of Storm decks, some Wizard Tribal decks of the past, and it seems to work out pretty well. Put in a ton of cantrips and just Grixis control, and the deck seems to be pretty good. But anyway, she's just a fantastic commander option. I absolutely love her. She's definitely one of my favorite decks now. Then number one, my number one favorite card from 2017 is Vindictive Lich. Now keep in mind, this came out in the Wizard deck, but it's also incredibly powerful in Zombie Tribal. It's also pretty powerful in Marin of Clan Neltoth. It's also pretty powerful in just about any deck that plays black that can bring back creatures from the graveyard. And oh boy, this card is just fantastic. I love everything about it. It's a zombie wizard, which means you throw them into Inala, you get an extra token, you swing. If they block, well, you get 3 different modes you get to choose from, and it's perfect for Commander. This is exactly what you want. And you know it's specifically made for multiplayer Commander because you have 3 different modes for 3 different opponents. And they have to target different opponents, which is the only bad thing about it. If you're playing 1v1, you can't just hit one opponent with all 3 modes. But aside from that, who really cares? That's a ton of love you're spreading around the table, or hate, however you want to view it. Whenever it dies, you get to choose different modes. The first mode, target opponent sacrifices a creature. That's incredibly useful. I mean, just think of Voltron. In the second mode, target opponent discards 2 cards. Well, hey, if your opponent has 2 or less cards, now you don't have a hand. That's fantastic. Target opponent loses 5 life. This is easy. You can kill this creature, sack it, have it come back over and over again, because you can just keep targeting different opponents with different modes, and having a target opponent lose 5 life, that's a lot of life. Even in a format where we start out with 40, that's just fantastic. So you have zombie synergies, you have wizard synergies, and you have graveyard synergies. This card is just fantastic. It's a 4/1 for 4. It's just fantastic. It's going to block for you all day. It's going to attack all day. Easily my favorite card for Commander in the year 2017. Anyway, you guys let me know what your favorite cards are. Let me know your thoughts on 2017. Did you like all the Commander options? Did you like the Commander cards in general? Anyway, you guys have a wonderful day. Void here signing off.